Hello and welcome to Sovereign RPG. I am Sovereign. Today we have some updates on Nightingale. There's been a Nightingale Q&A with Aaron Flynn, the ex-BioWare GM, and he explains the game's transition from online RPG to survival, because there was a little bit, the game started off in one direction and as iterations went on, it transformed into the survival RPG that we know is coming now. There's a lot of things that might seem a little bit weird and some things that might upset a few people, especially when it comes to console versions, etc., which we'll be going through later on. But we're going to go through the whole Q&A, and this is on the WCCF Tech website, which I'll leave a link in the pinned comment along with the timestamps for jumping to different parts of the video for anything that you might be interested in looking at yourselves. Now, if you don't know what Nightingale is and this is your first time hearing about it on the channel, I do have a video which I'll leave up here somewhere on the top right corner for you to go and check it out, what kind of game it is and what it's going to be in the future. So make sure to check that out for some background on Nightingale itself. Now, if you don't know who Aaron Flynn is, he is a developer that worked for BioWare for a long time, 20 years or so, and he's contributed towards many games. Baldur's Gate 2 Shadows of Arm, which is one of my favorite RPGs of all time. Neverwinter Nights, again, another one of my favorites. Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, again, another one of my favorite RPGs. Jade Empire, Mass Effect, Dragon Age Origins, and Mass Effect 2. Literally the entirety of the BioWare, all the best BioWare games this gentleman has worked on. So he's definitely got some experience within the RPG. Even though it's not survival RPGs, he does have a lot of world building experience, especially because it comes from BioWare, which was one of my favorite developers of all time. Basically grew up on all of their games, and it was just absolutely amazing. Like, they did a really good job of all of the games. Even the ones that were listed here are just insane. So let's go through the questions and answers. There's some really cool information on here. So when we last heard of your project, you mentioned it would be an online RPG with some inspiration from Neverwinter Nights. To be honest, Nightingale seems a big departure from that, and at least at first glance, why did you operate this shift? Is there anything left from the original pitch in terms of RPG elements, specifically like levels or anything of the sort? And Aaron Flynn went on to say, that is a good question. It isn't a case of where we started working on one thing and then scrapped it to start something else. It was down to the process of iteration and evolution as we honed in on aspects of gameplay, as I mentioned earlier. It shaped the world and expanded the team with new members adding their own ideas to the mix. As we latched onto different concepts and mechanics, we found that the experience was pushing us more into the direction of the survival genre. So we embraced that and started focusing our efforts into doing something more unique within that space. There will be RPG-like elements in the game, and there will certainly be other gameplay aspects that will be familiar to other genres and projects that the team has worked on in the past. This, for me, is absolutely amazing. I really love the idea of this, because a lot of the survival games, they do have leveling and RPG elements, but it's very basic RPG elements. Now, RPGs, obviously the name of the channel is RPG, are my favorite genre of games, and to have a team that have worked so hard on other RPGs that are in the top 10 RPGs of all time, in my opinion, working on a survival RPG, we may see some really good mechanics and some really good things that will be coming out of it. The next question was a little bit weird, and this is obviously news outlets and stuff just trying to go on the fact that a lot of like the US based players and stuff like that really have an adverse reaction to companies like Tencent, which are Chinese owned and run. And they asked if Inflection received a separate investment from the Chinese company. And he did go on to say that all I can say right now is that we're incredibly fortunate to have the proud support of Tencent on this project. So that's a yes, which doesn't mean anything because the development team are not based in China. The development company is not a Chinese-based company. There's just money involved in it. Now, you could say that there is a chance that the money involved in it could set the direction of how the survival game is going to go, the monetization, if there is any inside of it, etc., etc. But that's neither here nor there. We don't know any details on that so far. In the next question, they asked Aaron to break down what the shared world, like the shared world survival crafting game actually means. And will you have to manually join a server from a list, or will the process be seamless? So if you like look at Arc, etc., then you just go from different servers and you just pick a server on the list, and that's usually how it works, and with every survival game that I've ever played. But he didn't really give an answer. He said a lot of these details we'll be talking about in the future, but what I will say is that we have a mantra at the studio, which is Millions Realm, One Universe, which is Million Realms, One Universe. What we mean by that is we always want to give players the sense that they're connected to another world, or one another, that the world exists beyond their experience with it. When Nightingale begins, survivors of the Cataclysm event have been scattered across the different realms. So we want to represent that through unifying the community in a way that feels present and meaningful to the player. Part of that is players intersecting with one another as they travel through the realms. Now, we have talked about this previously before, where there's going to be players all over the place, and when you're actually jumping into a new realm, unlocking a new realm when you complete the realm that you're in, you can run into other players that will be jumping across. Now, it seems like there's going to be a sort of new system with this, something that we haven't really seen before, something similar to the way that Last Oasis works, where you'll be jumping across from the different places and you can run into other players. It's one massive world, but it's the different servers that jump across. It may have something like that, which I'm not adverse to, which isn't the best system in the world, but I mean, Inflection could grow upon that system and make it better than it was in Last Oasis. Now, the survival aspect of the game, they've asked for some examples on the elements in Nightingale. Will players be required to eat, drink, sleep, etc.? Your standard survival gaming stuff. If it doesn't have that, how can it be called a survival game? It has to have that. I mean, that's not even a question. But they did say they'll be going in more in depth around the gameplay systems in the future, but players can expect a good grounding of survival elements within Nightingale. We want to put our own stamp on them, which could be good or bad, but players expect a certain palette too. What we've tried to do is find ways in which we can expand them or refine them in ways that make it unique to the Nightingale experience. There could be several ways that they could probably go about doing something like this, and they could have sort of different resources that are required. So it might not just be food, water, and energy. Like in other space games we have oxygen, food, and water, and many other games sort of just swap what you need to have. Maybe it's certain power that you need, certain energy like electricity that you're going to be using. There's a lot of Victorian style stuff in here. So you're going to be seeing a lot of like the towers with the Tesla coils and stuff like that, which would be quite interesting if that's something that you have to use as an actual resource. Now, the next question is quite interesting. There's no shortage of crafting focused games lately. Granted, there's 1,000,001 Chinese-made survival games, but we haven't really seen many in the West as of recent years. So how do they plan to make theirs stand out from the crowd? He goes on to say that that's a difficult question in some ways because we don't spend a lot of time comparing ourselves to other titles. That's a good thing. Or looking at a game and thinking to ourselves, let's do that, but better. I mean, every development team does that. That's literally what the brainstorming goes to. What is on the market right now? What is liked on the market? What is hated on the market? Let's grab those out of the market because that will make it for a better game. I think he's being a little bit dishonest there, but that might just be me being a little bit of a, I don't know, pessimistic asshole. But it definitely seems like if they didn't go into a genre, like a new market that they haven't been involved in before, without looking at previous games and what works and what doesn't work, then they're not doing the due diligence that they need to make the game better. So I don't really know, like I don't understand that answer. He does go on to say he loves crafting games and there are times when you're hit with some great feature or idea that will spark a little inspiration. But to go back to your original point about what makes us stand out, you know, I could provide you with a list of things that I think achieve that, but so much of it is down to the individual and the ways in which they interact with the world. What's important is that we create a backdrop that offers an abundance of choice as well as tools to be able to embark on an adventure that feels unique. This is just a very PR answer. If he turns around and gives a load of mechanics that are going to be happening, a lot of the, like, you'll have the player base spit. These guys like it, these guys don't like it, and it's just going to go on and on and on, and people are going to argue about stuff, and they could lose players that could come into the game, or they could gain players, etc. It's a double-edged sword when it comes to that sort of thing. Now we get into some more of the survival gaming backbone, which is the crafting, the gathering, and the loot, etc., and adventuring like dungeons in Nightingale. And he goes on to say there will be quests in the game. There are NPCs that you'll be able to interact with that will offer you quests, and you'll be able to gather materials and other things by completing those. The size and scope of those quests we'll be talking about later, but as you can see in the trailer, there will be some definite challenges that may require you to team up with other players to overcome. So that might be something like world bosses, etc. You won't be able to go and solo them. Then again, it's a survival game and we all find ways to do stuff that we're not supposed to do. It's literally part and what makes the survival genre so great. Now the next question is about procedural generation, and is there anything while building the game that is using procedural generation? If you don't know what that is, it's where they put in it's where everything is randomized. So when you go into a new place is randomized, so it's never the same for two people. And they did say that they're a part of the realms and their technology that they're developing, so we aren't able to confirm exact sizes or be specified here. However, one of the things that I feel really differentiates Nightingale is the diversity of worlds that players have to explore. Rather than a singular map, players have access to a multitude of realms, each with their own look and feel, creatures and challenges that are really exciting from a development perspective, as we can constantly find new ways to surprise and challenge players. It's a really good, like, this is what I'm most excited for in Nightingale, the fact that there is a lot of different ways that they could implement new things into the Fey realms, because it's a magical thing. Fey realms are magical, and they could be any kind of biome that you could possibly imagine, and no one could question it because it is fantastical. So they could literally throw up anything and it could continue to grow. The game could be developed and it's not like sort of stuck in a box like Ark where it has to be certain things and certain biomes, etc, etc. And in Conan, where it's basically the same thing as Ark, where you have the snow, you have the desert, you have just standard forest, you got jungles, etc. So it would definitely be interesting to see what comes out of this development process. Now, in a lot of the trailers, we saw stuff about ranged combat. We saw a lot of gunplay, etc. We didn't see many melee combat style things, but I'm sure that it will be there. And they go on to say, do you plan to make it easy or hard to respec your character, and will it be equally possible to specialize in melee combat? And they said, definitely, we want players to choose what works for them based on advantages, disadvantages, and individual play styles. We serve up the options and let players choose. That is so important to the survival genre, and it always is. In most survival games that you have, you're going to be having things that you have to craft up to respec and stuff like that. You got the food in Ark, in Myth of Empires, you got the potion. In Conan, you just eat those yellow flowers that are all over the bloody map. But that's definitely something that I would personally want to see in the game. I want to be able to try a lot of different things. I don't want it to be massively difficult. I don't mind a bit of a grind to get the potions and food sorted, but I don't want it to be massively hard to be able to respec, especially when it's going to, like, through development and when a game first releases and all the players come in, a lot of stuff changes, things get nerfed, things get like made overpowered by accident, whatever they do, and there's a lot of different things going on. So I'm hoping that it will be an easy thing to add to the game. Now, there will be a main goal for players. It's going to be an overarching story, and there's going to be a lot of information there. You're going to be working your way back to the main city, and you have to navigate the realms and find a way back to that Nightingale city. There will be specific quests and interactions that will further that journey, but this isn't an RPG, so it'd be wrong to think along those lines when picturing that. I still think, because of the background that the development team have and Aaron Flynn has, there's still going to be a very big stamp on the RPG side of storytelling, so I'm hoping that's the case, because I would love a real survival game with a real background story going on. I'd really love something like that, and it pushes towards an end game. Now, this is the thing that might annoy some people. Will the game be ported to consoles eventually? If so, do you plan to add cross-platform functionality once that happens? They're not thinking about consoles at all right now. They're concentrating on making the game great for PC early access later in the year, so it has confirmed that it will be in early access rather than being a full developed released game. So we will be looking for that later in the year. So it will be coming this year, at least for the early access. And I'm really looking forward to that personally. They talked about upgrading to the Unreal Engine 5. And he said he's not looking at it right now, but they will take a serious look later on once they get to a certain point in development and see if they want to change it over. Games like Ashes of Creation and stuff are changed over to UE5, and it's sort of slowed down their development again. We'll have to see how that goes in the future. And that's what we have for the Q&A. Was there some interesting information in there that you like the look of? Are you more excited for Nightingale? Are you less excited for Nightingale? Please let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on the game. Remember to like the video if you do enjoy my content, and subscribe for all your survival gaming content. We have some new projects coming up that I really am working hard on at the moment, and hopefully we'll be able to get it out as soon as possible. There will be live streaming at the weekends again and during the weekdays. So make sure to look out for that. The link for Twitch is in the description. We have it back up and running, so we can stream back on Twitch again, which is fantastic. If you'd like to support myself and the channel, we do have a Patreon in the description. It will help out tremendously, as this is my only form of income at the moment. I want to thank you all for watching. Fly safe and avoid local chat scams.